Hi, this is Richard Triggs from Arete Executive, and I'd like to welcome Colin Clerke. We're having a pre-recorded webinar now to talk about a weekend in good company, which is a workshop that we're going to be running in Brisbane on the 1st and 2nd of August. So, Colin, thanks for joining me. And what we'd like to do today is just to get a bit of an idea of your background and some of the coaching that you've done and the kind of results that you've achieved for your clients. Then we'll talk about your motivation for putting together a weekend in good company and what the format will be and what people who attend should expect to get from the weekend. And then I'll just close out with some of the logistical items. So if you'd like to just begin, Colin, just tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to this space of coaching high-end senior executives.
Okay, thanks for having me, Richard. Goes way back to the 70s. I studied architecture in the 70s, qualified about the early to mid 70s, then went off to India and have always been possessed by an inclination to want to know what makes people tick, why people do what they do and how they do it and why they don't get what they want. So that took me to India. I met with amazing people over there. After I'd finished this phase of my life, I then joined corporate life and got into some general management roles in Melbourne and culminating in a 2-year commercial stint with KPMG in Melbourne. Having done all that, I then formed and was a founding member of the Tilbury Group, which are management consultants in Melbourne in the very early 90s. And this led me into one-on-one group executive coaching. I've been doing that one-on-one ever since for the last 25 years. I have done mostly one-on-ones, but I've also done a lot of group work, workshop facilitation, team stuff, leadership stuff. So that's my background behind running this weekend.
Okay, great. And so having been in the coaching space for 20 years or so, what are some of the challenges that people bring to you when they commence coaching and some of the things that you work with them on and the outcomes that you've been able to assist them in achieving?
Okay. What people present in a coaching assignment is usually very, very different to what they actually want to work on. And having done this for almost 30,000 hours now in the room with executives and business people of all kinds in every industry, it's clear for most of them that they're not getting what they want. It's really, really obvious. And I'll explain that what they'd really love to do doesn't match up with the actions they're taking today. So if you do ask your average person in the street, your average business person, what do you really want? They would usually say something generically like, I want to be happy, I want to be healthy, wealthy and wise. And then you look at what they're doing and it doesn't always match up to what they say they want. So they run out of time. They may have the money, but they don't have the time. They have the time, but they don't have the money. They have health problems. They're challenged in all kinds of areas. And usually they don't end up getting what they'd really love. So they end up living out a certain sort of what you'd call an invisible script. And over the last 25 years of being in the room with these people, I started to become very, very hip to this invisible script in everyone, this unconscious, subconscious patterning in people that was not always working to what they consciously thought they were headed for. So they got very different results in life than the ones they thought they were going to get. And time goes by, they get older, they get more worn out, they get more disillusioned, and usually there's some kind of crisis appears in their life at some point. And usually when they're questioning what they're really up to, that's when, as a rule, they've found their way to me for more intensive coaching.
And so you mentioned that they're in crisis. Would you say that the majority of people that you're coaching are coming from a position of crisis, or are you also coaching people who life's pretty good, they're achieving good results, but they're wanting to maximize their potential?
Yeah, that's a good question. I use the word crisis in a positive sense, not in a negative sense. So it means they feel that it's imperative that they change something. It may be going well, it may be going not so well, but they're clear that it's time to change something. And in this day and age, for the modern business person, the modern entrepreneur, the modern professional, this imperative to create more is just as important as this imperative to compete. So it's not about working harder. It's not even about working just necessarily smarter. It's about being more and more creative. And as you know, the human being is a 24/7 creating machine. And the trick is to create what you want as opposed to what you don't.
So what are the kinds of people that you've coached, and what are some of the outcomes that you've been able to achieve for them?
Okay. I've coached all kinds of people, from chairman of the board right down to a line manager, but mostly it's in that CEO, CFO, GM, managing partner, owner of a business, entrepreneurial sort of character, male and female. They have a variety of issues they present, succession issues, purchasing a business, selling a business, inspiring their team, increasing sales, decreasing expenses, the usual kind of business challenges that you would see every day of the week, those kinds of things. When I work with people one-on-one, it becomes clear that despite what they originally thought, it's actually something they're doing rather than necessarily something that's, quote, just mysteriously happening to them. So, for example, a CEO that can see it's time to hand over leadership of this business has a problem letting go, passing the baton on to the next generation. That person usually has issues around trust, around ownership, around letting the business be run by others. So they usually butt up against their own beliefs and values around trust, stuff like that.
Okay. And I know that, from my own experience, Colin, we were introduced probably 7 or 8 years ago. And when you coached me, it was about maximizing my performance and also the performance of my team. And we achieved some really amazing outcomes. And I know that from the kind of people that I've been referring you to, who may be aspiring CEOs or people who are looking to move into more of a portfolio career and take that step from being a C-suite executive into sitting on boards and so on. Talk a little bit about the kind of work you've done with people like that to enable them to achieve their full career potential.
Okay, another great question. Thank you. As a rule, the impetus to become a C-suite executive or to go further to a board level or some maybe higher entrepreneurial level of functioning is like it's a silent whisper going on in someone, which I would call their true creative potential. As a rule, most people don't give this true creative potential full run to express itself and to give them the results that they want. Over the last 25 years, I've developed a way to actually harness this creative impulse to actually show someone, A, where they're at truly, what they're actually doing, what they're attracting into their lives, and why their lives in business are the way they are, and B, how to locate what you'd really, really love. Now, you have to do the first one using logic, and you have to do the second one using intuition and imagination. So someone who's aspiring to greater things in their work life has to incorporate both of these components, both logic, sensibility, rationale, intellect, and on the other side, intuition, imagination, and the use of their creativity.
So, there are a lot of people in the executive coaching space, some better than others. You've been around for a long time. If you had to talk about what's unique about your orientation as compared to all of the others in the space, or what enables you to get the best results from your clients, what would you say that is?
I would say it's probably a combination of all of this exposure I've had to executives over 25 years, because remember, 25 years ago, it wasn't called coaching. It was just called management consulting. This coaching word, this metaphor for sporting performance has only been used for probably the last 15 to 20 years. Prior to that, it was just called management consulting. But really, I'd say the essence of it, the crux in the work I do, is this understanding of both the rationale, logical mind, and on the other side, the intuitive, creative, imaginative mind. And from my humble point of view, you need both of these to set up what's called a creative tension.
Mm-hmm.
High performers learn to hang out with creative tension, and people who tend to fall by the wayside don't hang out with creative tension. So you can sort of categorize them in two ways. Some people are more creators, and other people tend to feel like they're more victims of circumstance. The people that go all the way and create the life they love tend to struggle with themselves, and the people that fall by the wayside typically struggle with their circumstances. So you have to be highly creative, highly imaginative, highly intuitive, and at the same time, highly practical and logical and rational. So you need both. I'd say that's what I bring.
Okay, great. And so obviously you've had thousands of hours of one-on-one coaching. We've now created this weekend, a weekend in good company. So talk a bit about your motivation as to why you've decided to do that. And then we'll start to talk about, what's going to happen on the weekend and what people can expect.
Okay. It's probably time for me personally to take what I do to a wider audience, to start working more in groups rather than just merely one-on-ones. Of all the groups I've done over the years, I have noticed there's an exponential effect on individuals in a group setting rather than on the one-on-one setting. If the group setting is confidential, it can hold the energy of all those participants, and they typically get a much better result than one-on-one. One-on-one takes a lot longer time, and the way I've set this weekend up, Richard, is to use the group to serve the individual. So it's definitely not just an intellectual coming along for some more information. It's highly experiential, mostly experiential. So that's why I've decided to do this thing, reach a wider audience and really work on this disconnect between someone's true heart motivation and their action.
Okay. And so ideally, what are the kind of people that you'd like to see in the room, what's their motivation for wanting to participate?
Kind of characters like ourselves. They would be intelligent, well-educated. They'd be highly professional. They'd be hardworking. They would be engaged in all sorts of endeavors in their life, professionally and personally, and they're looking to either get the edge or resolve what's holding them back from going to the next level. That would be the kind of person I'm looking at. The kind of individual that just intuitively knows that they need to be more creative and intuitively knows that there's more for them, that there's actually something that's calling to them that they actually want to respond to.
Okay. And so what would people expect to have happen over the weekend, and what are the kind of outcomes that they should be looking to achieve?
Okay, so as I mentioned before, this weekend will be highly participatory, experiential. There'll be a tiny little bit of info just to sort of frame it up, but basically you'll be in the driver's seat of your own life and in the lives of all of those other professionals at the weekend, and you'll be experiencing this firsthand. You won't just be believing what I'm saying, you'll be actually getting the points that I'm trying to get across. So what you would be getting from this, first up would be, I would say, a much greater clarity around where you are, why you're at where you're at in life, what's working and what's not working in your professional life, A. B, you'll be able to establish a compelling vision for your future. And this is a vision that's not an extension of your past. So it's a true, creative, compelling vision that you connect to from your feeling sense. So that's B. So A, get clear about where you are. B, get clear about what you truly love, what you truly like to create. And I use the word love deliberately, not like or can afford or think you're capable of, just what you'd love. So it's moving more into a non-logical feeling sense. And C, There's action steps you need to take to get from where you are to where you want to be. I'd say they're the three biggest things you'll get from this weekend. But also, as a byproduct, you'll cultivate your intuition. You'll learn how to turbocharge your creativity, which is very essential for leadership these days. You will be able to give an expression to what you really love and what moves you. And you'll get a sense of just what you're up to that holds you back and what you need to do to move forward.
Okay, and you've used words like love and intuition and so on, but just to potentially allay concerns that this is some tree-hugging hippie woo-woo event, talk a little bit around some of that.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm definitely not. I do love trees, but I'm not a tree hugger. And over the last 25 years, I've been paid usually very generously by people to get them results in the real world, practical, real, measurable results. It's not just a feel-good thing. In fact, many times they may have to feel not so good in order to get the outcomes that they would love, because you hit up against what you're doing that prevents that. So it's very, very practical. It's not pie in the sky stuff. You'll get a very real, tangible sense of what you do that doesn't work and what you need to do that does work for you individually.
Okay, great. Well, look, I think the purpose of today was to give people a bit of a flavour in terms of you and your style and